Go ahead.
All right, we are going to learn how to do seam allowance. First of all, I have had you been changing this to number 1 for paper sewing. We are no longer changing to this to 1. So notice my machine is turning off and going back on. It's on 0. I want it on 0. The only thing you need to change from here on out, since we're not paper sewing on lines anymore, is just change it to a stitch length of 3. So to guide with a seam allowance, you stick your paper in the machine and you guide it next to the presser foot. So the 1/4 inch seam allowance is right here. You're guiding it to the edge of the presser foot. So I'm going to hold on to the string for the first 3 stitches. Then I'm just going to go all the way down, guiding this paper in line with the edge of the presser foot. Again, you're going to want to go nice and slow because this is how you will be sewing your lunch boxes and possibly tote bags. So I'm going to go faster for demonstration purposes, but you just want to keep this in line with the edge of your presser foot. Go all the way to the end for the first one. Then you're going to take your thread paper out of the machine, cut your thread, and that's all. Now on the second one, I'm going to teach you how to backstitch. So you're going to go to the next edge of your paper. So we're going to line this up just what we just did. Hold on to the string for the first 3 stitches. But after the first 3 stitches, you're going to do something different. So 1, 2, 3. Push the U-turn button. Go back 1, 2, 3. Then you go forward to the very end. You're guiding with the edge of your presser foot all the way down the paper. Go to the very end of the paper. Now, since I'm at the end, I'm going to back stitch again. So go back 1, 2, 3, then go forward 1, 2, 3. Now when I went backwards, I didn't have my foot on the pedal. I just pushed this button in the whole time. You don't have to put your foot in the pedal to back stitch. Lift your needle, cut your string. The purpose of a back stitch is so that when you sew a seam, like pretend this is a pair of pants, when I back stitch, it's going to keep my seam from coming out. This seam up here that I have not back stitched, I can just pull that out. This seam here that I have back stitched, it's not pulling out. So this makes your stitches secure. So you're now going to back stitch on all 4 of these. So going through doing this one, go through, do this one. This is your 1/4 inch seam allowance paper. You're going to do 2 pieces of paper like this, and then you're going to move on to your 5/8 inch seam allowance. So your 5/8 inch seam allowance, you're going to have to guide somewhere different. Notice the 5/8 is right there. It's this line here, extends all the way to here, and it's also right here. It's not marked right here, but you can see this little bobbin area. This line is 5/8. So I'm going to put my paper in line with the 5/8. We'll start at the beginning. And I know it's in line when my paper's lined up back here. And it's lined up right over here. So I'm going to go forward a few stitches, go backwards a few stitches. This is the pant seam allowance. Remember the one I just did was your lunch box. And then you're going to just guide here, or you can guide right here, making sure you're in line with 5/8 this time instead of the edge of your presser foot. So this one's a little bit more difficult because it takes more effort to keep it on a line that you're trying to guide to. Now many of your sewing machines, I have gone through and marked the 5/8 with a permanent marker, going backwards 3, going forwards. So this line should be darkened and easier to see. I will go through and make sure those are all marked for you guys before we sew this. Now to do the last one, the quilting squares that you've decorated, pretend like I've decorated these and this is the right side. Oh, here, let me grab a marker really quick. La la la, here we go. I decorated this and this one with my crayons. It looks beautiful. These are the right sides. These are the wrong sides. This is facing up. This is facing up, so it has a direction. I'm going to take these and put them together, right sides together, and both up portions of them are facing the right way. We're going to pin this all the way down the edge, lining up your fabric. Then we're going to come over here and we're going to use the edge of your presser foot or your 1/4 inch seam allowance to sew these. You must back stitch these. So go forward, 1, 2, 3, go back, and then go forward. You're going to notice it's so much easier to sew fabric than it is paper. Notice my fabric's not jiggling around like it was with the paper. So you will enjoy sewing on fabric as opposed to paper. So go to the end, do a little back stitch, go forward, take your fabric out, cut your strings. We'll do the next one the same way, so put another smiley face on here to show decoration. Put my tops facing each other the right direction. Pin this up real quick. Now I sewed over the pins. There is the chance that your needle can hit a pin and break your machine needle. So if you want to stop and pull the pins out as you go, you may. So go forward, holding on to the string, go backwards, go forward all the way to the end of the fabric. Back stitch at the end, cut your strings, take your pins out of both. Now we're going to go to the ironing board and press these. You'll press all seams when you sew, regardless of whether it's pants or your lunchbox. You'll press them open. So you take your right sides, put them down facing the ironing board, and then you open this seam up like so. And then you use the iron to press it. You're going to want to put the crayon side facing down because you don't want that crayon to transfer onto the iron. So put this onto the iron, right side facing down, open up your seam, and press. This is very important for the next step. Now we are going to take our two pieces, we're going to line them up so that everything's facing the same direction. This is what I want my quilting square to look like. So now I'm going to take these two and I'm going to pin them together at the top. First, I want to match my seam allowances here. Make sure this matches. And then I'm going to pin it together right there. That way it looks like a continuous line instead of two lines put together. Then I'm going to pin my corners. You can throw a pin in the center. And we are going to sew this, again, back stitching with a 1/4 inch seam allowance edge of the presser foot. Back stitch, go all the way down to the end. Again, you can take pins out if you're nervous about going over them. Now we are going to take our fabric out, clip our strings, come over to the ironing board, pull out our pins, and we're going to press this open as well. So put right sides facing down, open up your giant seam, and you're going to iron it nice and pressed open. So when you're finished, you'll have a design It looks like one giant square. We're going to do our 1/4 inch seam allowance first on paper. You're doing 2 of them. You're doing your 5/8 inch seam allowance on paper. You're doing 2 of those. And then you're going to grab your quilting squares and you're going to sew these together. You're going to turn these in. If your name is not on them, put a Post-it note on it with a pin and put it on my desk to turn in after it's sewn. The end.